Good afternoon, campus community. Welcome to News from the Real World. I'm Quinn.
I'm Jody.
Eleanor.
Atitra.
Today we're filming not live at the Design 2 studio. Today we're starting it off with the power of failure. Why is failing powerful? Tell us, Eleanor.
Great. Okay, well this article is subtitled Making the Last of Us, and it is by Andrew Webster for TheVerge.com, an editor pick. And it's the story of Neil Druckmann, who's a CMU grad, and his 10-year journey to make this PS3 game that's recently come out called The Last of Us. And in it he recounts all the failures and the setbacks that he had over the 10 years and concludes with basically showing you how it's made the game so much better and so much the success that it is today. So it's really about like how failure is a good thing. Yeah. What do you guys think about it?
I'm really impressed just with, I learned so much from the article about how much a video game is not just about killing the bad guy. There's actually sort of a story to it, and I never realized that.
I never knew that either, because I've only played Call of Duty that's all about shooting your friend in the face.
And I've only played Mario Kart and Duck Hunt,
Yeah.
so no one doesn't really have
No, but there's a whole story arc to it. This kind of like world-weary cop that they turned into a criminal, and this surrogate daughter girl that's immune to the zombie apocalypse that he's helping bring to safety.
It's almost like a movie now.
Yeah. I think
It's so real.
modern video games are like the narrative of movies meets like the interactivity of some theatre in some cases. And it's like, my friend is like a video game writer. She used to be a playwright and now she writes video games.
Well, they're all cast in film now. My buddy Quincy was on Grand Theft Auto 5 playing a cop, and like he had to sign like a major confidentiality clause, and now it's just coming out. But it's for you, Quincy. Good job.
But they have designers and composers. They're people who score video games.
Yes.
What I found most interesting, another interesting thing about this article was in the progression, somewhere in the progression, I'm going to mess this up, I'm sorry. But, they were talking about the female character and how all women were going to be affected by a virus, and then people in the company were like, no, that's too misogynist.
Yeah.
And in the end, the guy was like, well, I just want a female character who's not sexualized in video games.
Right.
Because I feel like the days of Mortal Kombat, it was just these women.
With large breasts. And
Scantily clad, holding guns.
It's like teenage male fantasy.
Yeah, kind of cool.
But I think it's so cool that like he wanted to do that, but then he ended up making something along the way that was like misogynistic, but then over time, with feedback and all of that, he finally got to the point where, he's created, as you said, one of the coolest non-sexual female characters. But it's hard to do that.
All right. Well done, CMU grad. We're proud of you. That brings us to the Bards. This is a student pick. What Shakespeare sounded like. This is from Open University Big Think editors, and it's actually not really. It's a video on a 10-minute video about original pronunciations, or OP, in Shakespeare's plays, and how that totally changes the meaning of certain speeches and the scanning of certain lines. And the Globe, in particular, has done a couple productions in the last 10 years that go back to the OP of Shakespeare.
Right.
And they've been wildly successful. And it makes a lot of sense because that company is so dedicated to recreating the experience of seeing Shakespeare's plays when they were originally produced. And the video is very cool. It follows this linguistics professor, David Crystal, and his son Ben, who's an actor, and they talk about OP. What'd you guys think?
Yeah, I was astounded. I thought it was so cool, and I just thought it was so great hearing him perform the Shakespeare, and it just had this kind of like guttural, kind of grunty, dirty, roaring.
It sounded like he was talking in more of a Cockney or London accent than RP or received pronunciation. It it gave it such a more everyman quality.
Versus
Down
like
here.
Which
really
made me
Shakespeare.
kind of
All
wonder.
from your sapphire.
Which made me kind of wonder what we're losing with our American accented Shakespeare, or in my humble upbringing, our Southern accented Shakespeare.
Well, in some ways, maybe the American accented Shakespeare is closer to the OP.
Maybe.
You know, because it's a little gruffer and the harder R's. You know, it's actually it might be closer to it than the dropped R and the more higher placed pitch tone
Yeah,
of RP.
the other difference, the other thing that this article pointed out to me was that Shakespeare is really meant to be played and not read, because especially with the example they gave an example from Romeo and Juliet about the word loins and how back then it was pronounced lines, and in the exact text it's a play on words about genetic lines and,
as well as the thing springing from between.
right. And but they're spelled completely differently, and reading it and hearing it are two different things. So kind of made me think about that.
Yeah. I mean, what's to stop? I mean, people from embracing this OP in their productions. Is it that it's hard to understand? Or?
It might be that. It might also be I imagine the sheer work that would go into creating one of those productions, and the dramaturgical work that would be necessary. But I found it really interesting. It totally changed certain meanings of things. They had that sonnet with the words that should have rhymed. The couplet at the end of the sonnet should have rhymed with proved and loved. In the OP, it would be proved and loved, and it would have the rhyme.
So is that just editors changing it over time, like
Well,
changing it to the modern spelling?
You gotta think at that time, especially, that the English language was being invented. What did Shakespeare invent? Something like upwards of 20,000 words. So this was all so much more fluid. So it makes sense that in these early stages of the invention of the language, that over the next few centuries it would evolve even more. So, very interesting.
Just over time, all the pronunciation styles.
On to my personal favorite article of the week, actually. Saturn and the Arts. I love this article.
Me too. Saturn and the Arts, a challenge by Scott Walters for the Clyde Fitch Report, an editor pick. So this article was about this guy Scott Walters going to meet with a young theatre director who had gotten a job, like got a directing gig, and was sort of lamenting the fact that this play that he'd been asked to direct really had no direct relevance to the community in which he was going to direct it, and he as well wouldn't have much time to engage with the community. He was kind of flying in, doing the gig and getting out. And the question that he was asking was, how can I make theatre in this country which is directly relevant to specific communities, and how can I work with communities to create theatre? And really kind of attacking, I guess, like the regional theatre model or just the general theatre model in the United States.
And also the concentration of arts communities in New York, LA, and Chicago.
The concentration, and also the fact that they all kind of seem to do a lot of the same plays and have a very similar mix of plays.
And get all the funding.
And get all the funding, what do you guys think about this?
He brought up some very, I think, like hot topic points.
Provocative.
Yeah. And what was weird to me, and maybe it's just because my lack of understanding, is he was asking all these questions, and he was the leader of this Cradle organization, which is supposed to kind of cultivate arts leadership and education in smaller communities, right? And he was from Asheville, North Carolina.
Yeah,
right?
it teaches at UNC. Go UNC.
And Asheville's just like, it's what they say about Asheville, it's like it's a dot of blue and a sea of red.
It's like the Berkeley of the East.
Yeah, it's
great
it's just
town.
so full of artists. And so I could empathize with his like stunned like, well, what do we do? At the same time, I was like, this is your deal. I'm looking to you for answers.
The thing I loved most was him talking about, how the reference to Saturn. It's referencing how the arts eats its young, and painting, and how what should be done in this country, instead of giving all the funding to more than half the funding to 2% of the bigger organizations, it should be spread out amongst younger companies in order to give them a leg up, and then to pull the funding till they reach a place of sustainability. Because and the example used was the business model of venture capitalism. Yeah.
That was the coolest part of the article, I thought, was how he said the best way you can teach them is to give them the resources and then cut them off at the legs.
Absolutely.
Because then they have to learn how to create something sustainable. I thought that was actually pretty.
Yeah.
And new ideas are then generated by the next generation.
Because Peter Cook and I were actually talking about this the other day. Because he was saying, I was saying, why don't people come out of college in America and start theatre companies and want to start making theatre? That's what everyone does in New Zealand and Australia. Like, come on, just make theatre. Like, it's not that hard. And he said to me, well, the reason is that everybody comes out of college with these massive loans, and so they have to start earning money straight away. And so the people that can just do their own thing and cruise around are the people who come from a place of privilege and have rich parents and all of that. And so young artists sort of just are trying to integrate into the already existing institutions, because, as this article points out, there's not a lot of space to create your own thing.
That's also happened in Thailand. I mean, when I read it, I was like, yeah, I've been through that. That was the time when I started to settle some company. I mean, it's not a company. It's a group of performers, and actually we kind of asked for money to for us to set up some funding and stuff. And they said, who are you? I don't know you. So I don't know you. You better work with some big company that already exists.
Yeah.
And I was like, great. Now I read it, I was like, this article is I know what it is. The same. Yeah, in New Zealand, it's
Well, that does it for our first segment. Please join us for our second. Thank you.
Oh.
Who's hosting?
Thanks, Jordan. Jody is.
No, Quinn.
No, Eleanor is.
Quinn's hosting.
I'm not
I said not it.
They can't have the